What's up, everybody? Today is Wednesday, September 1st, 2021. I'm here to try to do something that I've been trying to do for a while. For some reason, I've just been having a hard time articulating my thoughts on this issue. The issue being the war in Afghanistan. It's such a complicated subject with so much history, and it's really hard to condense without preparing some kind of notes, which at least right now is not in the spirit of what I'm trying to do here, because, well, for the interested, preparation often tends to be an obstacle for me to actually do things, because I'm like, oh, this is going to take me forever to do if I have to prepare for it in order for it to be really good. So in short, the perfect is the enemy of the good. So anyways, I'm choosing to just ramble about it and hopefully get my message across. But I want to start by saying that I fully support President Joe Biden in his decision to withdraw from Afghanistan. We've been at war with that country, in that country, I should say, for 20 years. We're coming up with the 20-year anniversary of September 11th. And thousands of American soldiers have died. Tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of Afghans have died. I think that includes Al-Qaeda and other militants, but it's an unfathomable amount of death and suffering that is completely unnecessary. Our mission was first to take out Al-Qaeda and kill Osama bin Laden for the attacks he did on 9/11. And although I tend to be a pacifist in most of my inclinations, I do think we were justified. There's a rare instance where I think the United States' use of military force was justified because of the attack. The attack killed thousands of U.S. citizens, innocent people, and as a result, I agree with George W. Bush and the rest of the elected officials at the time who said we should invade Afghanistan in pursuit of Osama bin Laden. But that war, we effectively dismantled and destroyed Al-Qaeda towards the end of the 2000s, and we killed Osama bin Laden 10 years ago. It was 2011, and it's 10 years later, and it really begs the question, what are we doing there? The United States has a history of invading countries that did not attack us. Now, obviously, in the case of Afghanistan, we were attacked by Osama bin Laden, but Afghanistan is barely a country as it is. It's was under Taliban control, is now once again. It's always been a contested territory. It's really not a country in the way we think of a country like the United States or Japan or Spain, you name it. And so we got in there with this particular mission, and once we fulfilled that mission, we should have left right then and there. We should have left at 2000, once Osama bin Laden was dead. We should have withdrawn within X number of months, and that's it. We should have never invaded Iraq. One of the biggest injustices of the George W. Bush administration, which there are many, was choosing to invade Iraq, a country that did not attack us. We simply did so under the pretense that they were somehow involved in facilitating 9/11. None of that proved to be true. We then used the pretense that they had weapons of mass destruction. Also did not prove to be true. In fact, we knew we were deliberately lying because we did not have any information to corroborate that. So And then, the broader war on terror became this massive, project with no definite end to attack terrorism wherever we saw fit. I believe that the United States does not have the right to invade other countries for that reason. I believe in the sovereignty of people and nations, so I don't think that we can just go and invade a country or attack a country because there are people there that might potentially harm us. I only believe the United States can take military action defensively. So, again, in the case of Afghanistan, we were attacked, and we believed that the perpetrators were in Afghanistan, which they were, and we effectively dismantled their entire group. Now, the Taliban is not affiliated with Al-Qaeda. It's not affiliated with ISIS. In fact, I'm not sure of the relationship with Al-Qaeda, but I know in the case of ISIS that they're active enemies. They have different competing religious and political goals. So they actually have no positive relationship to speak of. They are warring and will continue to be warring into the indefinite future. But, when we decided to stay in Afghanistan after the end of, once we killed Osama bin Laden, we totally changed the purpose of the mission. The mission became, we're going to stay there in order to protect the democratic government we were installing, allegedly democratic government, in order to give it a chance to grow and breathe and try to create a modern, civilized democracy in the way that we think of European countries or whatnot. And so that type of project is called nation building. The idea that we should assist another country in its ability to build itself up, which ostensibly sounds great. Why wouldn't we assist other countries in that process? And we do economically with many countries around the world. In some instances, it's good. In some instances, it's bad. There's a lot of, again, the history of the United States foreign policy post World War II has been primarily atrocious, with few exceptions. We have installed dictatorships all over the world. We have assassinated, through the CIA, have facilitated or directly assassinated democratically elected leaders because they did not serve our business interests. And so, when we kind of undertook this project of turning Afghanistan into a democracy and a secular nation, we were undertaking an endeavor that was not it was not our responsibility, nor was it our right. The people of Afghanistan are not not citizens of the United States. They are not our subjects. They did not ask for us to be there. We went there for our own reasons, which again I was in favor of initially, but then we stayed without the consent of the governed, the people that were there. It's not like they all decided, we really want the United States to be here. And even if they did, we never gave them the option. They didn't, vote for the United States to stay. And we installed effectively what was a puppet dictatorship. I mean, I don't know the finer details in terms of how democratic, not awful the leadership in Afghanistan was, but what I do know is that it was immensely corrupt. As in, there was money being exchanged, all hands, there was bribes, there was, nepotism, there was outright illegal activity. And there's a great example. There was so in Afghanistan, they have trillions of dollars worth of mineral wealth, as well as enormous poppy fields. And poppy is what is used to make heroin and other and actual pharmaceutical drugs. I think some of them are derived, if I'm not mistaken, from the sap of the poppy plant. And there's plenty of fields, enormously important for drug trafficking, primary source of income, or one of the major sources of income for the Taliban and other groups. And so we would take some of these fields and we would put them in the hands of the Afghans that we deemed to be okay, and then they would go and use those fields to sell drugs anyways. So, it's not like it was just taking away the power from the pre-existing, say, Taliban or whatever, and giving it to someone else. And so there's records of government officials having their own giant fields of the poppy plant, and just making a killing, despite the fact that we had taken away that land under the pretense from the previous owners, under the pretense that this was to stop the drug trafficking and whatnot. So there's one of many. Another example is that, the Taliban isn't the only game in town. There's a bunch of different factions of what you can describe as warlords, regionally speaking, and they are not by any means people that we should be in cahoots with. These are people who murder, rape. They traffic, do human trafficking. They have child sex slaves. And this is widely documented. This is information that's publicly known and reported. And in fact, the whistleblowers within the military that reported this information, they were then dishonorably discharged because of their decision to release that information. I'm not sure if they were prosecuted, but criminally prosecuted, but I know they were not supported in that endeavor. That information was not supposed to be public, and now it is. And it goes to show the type of people we were getting in bed with, again, in order to secure power in that region. Afghanistan has been historically known to be an unstable region. There's a history behind it. Initially, the Soviets were trying to take control there, and I believe the British had at some point unsuccessfully. The Soviets were unsuccessful in part because we were funding their opposition, which was the Mujahideen, I think it's pronounced, who were effectively what we would consider modern-day terrorists, but they were in opposition to, they were guerrilla, and they were in opposition to the Soviet Union, and so we funded them and armed them. And ironically, from that group emerged the modern Taliban, and a lot of those resources ended up in the hands of Al-Qaeda. So we trained our own enemies. So this is pretty standard U.S. foreign policy of us putting our hands in places out of economic interests or out of some geopolitical strategic move against our adversaries, such as the Soviet Union now, Russia and China and whatnot. So, the region has been in a total mess before we got there. It will continue to be a mess long after we left. And unfortunately, the whole reason why I'm so vehemently opposed, and I'm so much on the side of President Joe Biden, is because of the death that was happening as a result of our presence. The United States has I can't remember if this is across all of our foreign adventures, our current foreign adventures, or if this is particular to Afghanistan. There's a lot of little facts that I'm missing here, but you get the gist of the information. we have a 90% civilian death rate with our drone strikes. That means 90% of the people we kill were not our intended targets. When you're in the middle of Afghanistan, if you're a male of a certain age, you're just automatically assumed, and you're within an area that has known terrorist activity, you're automatically assumed to be a potential militant or a militant. And so the women and children, the elders, anybody else who lives in the region, they were killed by us, by our taxpayer dollars. Innocent people were murdered, and they number in the thousands, maybe tens of thousands. Again, I forget the particular stats, but I know that we have a 90% civilian death rate, and that was under President Obama, who unfortunately made the awful decision to continue this war beyond the assassination of Osama bin Laden, and so Trump didn't even bother to report it. So I imagine it was even worse than that. But yeah, so we're killing tons of innocent people. We're bombing. Like, we're creating all kinds of fear. Imagine if you're a person that lives in that country and you constantly see these planes with this flag of the United States that are killing people. You don't really know why they're there. If you're personally affected, it's a recipe to become radicalized. Why wouldn't you hate a country that indiscriminately killed your family, that your innocent family? Look, the fact of the matter is that there's terrorist cells all over the world. There's people actively planning every day to commit some kind of attack on the United States and other developed countries, both within and outside of those countries. This isn't, it's not unique to Afghanistan. And so the idea that we're there to stop terrorism is an indefinite project. It's not, in fact, by our very presence, we are creating more of the thing we're trying to stop, because we are there without the consent of the people who live there. And we are at times vicious. There's lots of reporting of abuse by the U.S. military or the contractors that we've hired, the so-called defense contractors. It's just the war machine. And so we, so I mentioned the human casualties. Also there's the economic cost. Here in the United States, we do not have universal health care. We are the only major developed country in the world to not have it. We have millions, tens of millions of people who don't have health insurance, and they're not covered by our miserable safety net of Medicaid or Medicare. So they're one trip to the hospital of becoming bankrupted, or just dying because they can't afford to get treatment. We have one of the weakest social safety nets in terms of what we offer to our poor. We have a homelessness crisis that's out of control. We have incredible income inequality. Our education system is extremely unequal, and when it's in its bad places, it's absolutely terrible. I think the city of Baltimore, like, the median GPA is like a 0.13, with 0 being an F, so this country has incredible problems, and our infrastructure is crumbling. We still are primarily reliant on fossil fuels, so we could really use money to fund our own domestic needs. And here the United States has spent in Afghanistan, up until this point, $2 trillion. $2 trillion. To understand how big that is, think about $1 million. That seems like a lot of money. Most people will never make that kind of money in their lifetime. So think of $1 million. Now think of that 1,000 times. That's 1 billion with a B. So 1,000 million is 1 billion. Now think of 1,000 billion. That is 1 trillion. So we have $2 trillion we spent in creating weapons, and creating planes and ships, and infrastructure for our military operations there, intelligence, like, and you know, war is a business. I mean, this is what President Eisenhower said in his farewell address: is that the military-industrial complex, yes, he used those terms, is, you know, it's a business. It's a profitable business for defense. Again, I use that term in air quotes because really they're offense, they're violence promoters, not you know, most of the time. They are. We're spending billions of trillions of dollars that we could spend here domestically to solve our own serious problems on a war that had no definite end, that we were just causing pain and suffering to a large number of people, and only enticing and radicalizing more people and giving them a motive. You know, it's a very easy motive to say, hey, well, you know, come join whatever, insert, you know, terrorist group here, because we're there and we're actively bombing their country and engaging in military activity. So, you know, this is something that I don't think people understand how much money, what that money could have been done. So I'll use some comparisons. So people, you know, for example, free college. Per year, it would cost $80 billion per year for free college. That means we could have funded, entire United States could have had free community and trade schools and four-year colleges for everybody, funded through our taxes. The money that we've sent to fund the war machine in Afghanistan, or in our military, we could have paid for free college every single year since 2001 until today. Everyone could have had that. Imagine the difference it would have made for people like myself that are tens of thousands of dollars in student loan, for people who are hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loan debt. Imagine all the people that could have gone to college who just simply couldn't afford it. Imagine the radical difference, the benefit that our society would have if we spent that money domestically. Now, you could argue, you know, okay, for the first 10 years we were somewhat justified in our pursuit of Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden. Okay, then it's half the amount. It's 10 years of that. The point is, it's such an unfathomable, gargantuan amount of money that we've wasted for what result? The country is in the same condition, if not worse condition, than when we got there. The whole project of trying to build a stable, functioning democracy and economy was a failure. It's a massive failure, and evident by the fact that, you know, the 300,000 soldiers we trained in the exorbitant amount of money we spent in arming them and training them, they felt within days of our departure that they capitulated. They capitulated. Like, there was just like how much more proof do you need that what we were doing was wasting our time? And so a lot of people who have, I think, are well-intentioned because they see the violence that has come as a result from the Taliban retaking control and you know, how they're going to impose some kind of, you know, fundamentalist theocracy that is oppressive to women and whatnot, and other minorities. We were, you know, it's a good sentiment to have, to care about other people, but where were you the last 20 years when we were doing all these awful things every single year? There was people dying every single year at the hands of the Taliban, at the hands of us, at the hands of the warlords and ISIS. You know, suffering is an inherent part of that country right now. It has been for a long time, and that's not something we were going to solve militarily. You know, like that's or otherwise. We had no business being there beyond the completion of our mission. Some might even argue that we shouldn't even got to that point. We should have just eradicated Al-Qaeda and, you know, like let Osama bin Laden live wherever the hell he was living. But I'll grant, the idea that, okay, well, it was important to assassinate the leader of this organization that at that point had been largely dismantled. When I say organization, I mean like terrorist group. So we spent $2 trillion, 20 years, thousands of American lives lost, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of Afghans dead in the process, 90% civilian death rate with our drone strikes. And we got nothing out of it. In fact, we just provided the Taliban with some very sophisticated weaponry that they didn't have beforehand. We just left it there for them. We're like, hey, here's all of our like machine guns and Humvees, and it was a racket. War is a racket, and the suffering that you're seeing now has been going on for the last 10 years for the last 20 years, but especially the last 10 years. It's not like all of a sudden things got bad in Afghanistan because we left. Things were bad in Afghanistan. Excuse me. Sure, there were some gains made in terms of in certain city centers. We did it because we were investing money. We did build schools. There was some improvement in gender equality and education and quality of life for a not insignificant number of people. But by and large, most people in that country, if you can even call it a country, were not benefiting from us, and in fact were being actively harmed by our presence. And so just on the principle of sovereignty alone, we shouldn't have gone there. But when you insert the practicalities of the cost, money, the death, the United States, our military budget is the largest military budget in the world by a mile. We spend way, way more money than the next countries on our military. I think it's currently close to $800 billion right now. $800 billion per year is what we spend on our military and our bases all over the world, which I also take enormous issue with the fact that we have a military presence in all these countries that we are not a part of. That to me is imperialism, that's empire. I am vehemently opposed against that, even if there's ostensibly some level of local support. Usually it's through a lot of coercion and corruption that we achieve the consent of the government of these countries to have us install our military bases. But $800 billion every year, $2 trillion of which over the last 20 years went to Afghanistan. If we took a chunk of that money, we could provide universal pre-K. We could provide, I don't want to say universal health care specifically because it's a little bit more complicated in how it works, but it would make an enormous contribution in expanding Medicare to include dental, vision, hearing, to make it for younger people, to expand Obamacare, to create a public option. All this money into investing in green renewable energy that we are spending bombing a region that we do not belong in, that we have no right to be in, under the pretense that we were building some kind of country that someday would be, a utopia. We have no right being there, and it is not our responsibility to be there. We had a mission, we carried it out, and we should have left. Now, a lot of people are talking about what a disaster it's been and how it's like Vietnam. Yeah, I mean, the lesson from Vietnam is that we should have never been there in the first place. So it's a good thing we pulled out, even if the pullout was disastrous for Vietnam. Same thing goes for Biden. Every single president, Obama, Trump, and Biden, I don't know if Bush said he would pull out within his 2 terms. He might have said it towards the end that he was going to try to pull out before a certain time, but I'm not sure. That might not be true. But I know for a fact that Obama, Trump, and Biden all promised that we would end the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. We did not pull out of Iraq and Afghanistan. In fact, under Obama, we started invading more countries, which is unconstitutional. We have no... what you're supposed to do under the United States Constitution is Congress is supposed to pass a law authorizing war, which then gives the president permission to attack a given country. we did not provide that authorization to attack Syria or Libya or any of the other countries that we've got involved in over, during Obama's presidency. So again, awful, interventionist, imperialist U.S. foreign policy, and by the end of Obama's presidency, we did not get out of Afghanistan or Iraq or Syria or some other countries that I can't even list off the top of my head, but there's several more. Then Trump, same thing. One of the things he ran off was getting out of Afghanistan and Iraq. He's like, what are we doing there? It's a waste of money. As soon as he gets in there, capitulates to the generals, because the military-industrial complex is so powerful and so entrenched in their government that they have enormous influence over the president. So the president is being fed information constantly that says, well, shit, we can never get out of there because it's, the situation's bad. And the generals will come in and say, oh, no, if we just do a troop surge or if we just add this and that, finally things will come around. They kept saying that over and over again, and Obama and Trump, ate their bullshit all the way until the very end. Biden, incredibly, I had no expectation that Biden would be delivering on this, because I don't think Biden overall is a good politician, and I disagree with him on many of his positions. Though I do agree on some. Incredibly, President Biden delivered on this promise, and then everyone and their mothers came out to criticize about how the process could have been better. Look, I'm not going to debate whether or not the process could have been better. I genuinely do not know. And I will grant you that maybe it could have been better. Maybe there could have been a cleaner, safer way. But Trump had negotiated with the Taliban that we would withdraw by May 1st of this year. He negotiated it during his presidency, a peace deal. And so he was at least trying to get the wheels turning, even though he didn't complete it within his presidency. And Biden then took that plan and extended the deadline to August 31st. And here we are. It's September 1st. The war in Afghanistan is over. We are no longer spending trillions of dollars. And I haven't even gotten into the particulars of the defense contractors that have made a killing, an absolute killing, no pun intended, in the development of weapons throughout the duration of the war. Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, Honeywell, what's the one? BlackRock. All of these, just in my opinion, villainous, evil organizations that are literally dedicated to the creation of weapons. Weapons that kill people all over the world in the most efficient and atrocious ways imaginable. They made a killing off of this war, which is why they were so vehemently against pulling out, and why they used every trick in the book to stop it. And so the thing that is shocking, though not unsurprising, is how the media, the mainstream media, has been so united in its criticism of President Biden and his effort to pull out of Afghanistan. Ostensibly liberal or left-leaning outlets have all condemned the way that it's been done, have accused them of not listening to the intelligence communities. The intelligence communities have a vested interest in continuing the war. That's their whole function. The whole system that they operate under is of perpetual warfare. And so, of course, they're gonna try to sabotage the president with whatever means necessary in order to keep us there. There are some, elected officials in our country who are very open and transparent about the desire to stay there indefinitely, to be, because of a strategic, location of Afghanistan, because of its trillions of dollars of mineral wealth, because of its poppy fields, the strategic location being because Afghanistan borders China and it's very close to Russia. I don't believe we have the right to be there. Strategy, my ass. The United States is not supposed to be, it is in practice, but it's not supposed to be a colonial empire. It's not supposed to be a force of imperialism all over the world. It is, unfortunately, but that's not the what the values of our nation is supposed to strive to be. It's supposed to respect the sovereignty of other governments and to, not initiate war without some kind of very specific, in defense of some kind of very specific attack. To wrap this up, I just want to say that President Biden was completely correct in his decision to pull out. I don't think there was any way to make this pretty. Afghanistan was going to fall now, in 5 years, in 20 years. 5 years ago, 10 years ago, it would have fallen to the Taliban. The government, the president of Afghanistan that we had put there immediately left to, I forget the name of the country, starts with a T, Turkmenistan? I forget, with over $100 million of taxpayer money. And for the record, the majority of the taxpayer money that went to the war ended up back in the hands of the defense contractors. So we're effectively subsidizing these defense contractors because we pay them to do certain functions of our military, or our armed forces. I mean, I don't even know what the correct term is, but they produce the weapons and some other infrastructure that's a part of the war machine. So President Joe Biden was absolutely correct to do this. This is the best thing he's ever done. Honestly, in my opinion, I think he's already as good as Obama based on that alone. If he gets us out of Iraq, he's better than Obama. And I'm not saying Obama was good. I don't think Obama was a good president. I think he was a mediocre president and a giant disappointment at a time when we needed someone like a Franklin Delano Roosevelt, a sort of radical, change in the way our society was being governed. And instead, he ended up being a moderate that tried to compromise with a group of people that were without compromise, namely, the Republican Party. No more American soldiers are going to be sent to die. All of that money is no longer going to be spent to kill people in an endless war that had no solution, had no definitive objective. We have no business being there. We do not have a right to invade foreign countries for any reason other than an immediate defense as an act of war that's authorized by Congress. So if Canada decides to attack us militarily, its government, yes, maybe I would support an invasion in that case. But barring that level of, barring it being a defensive action, I do not think we have the right to be an aggressor. We have the strongest military in the history of mankind. We we exert force or power, whatever these, geopolitical people like to say, all over the world. I'm not going to get into a debate about China and Russia, but there's no need for us to spend as much as we're spending to keep up with them defensively. There are ways we can maintain a military that is sophisticated and advanced and a deterrent, if you will, without spending the obscene amount of money we've spent, $2 trillion in Afghanistan. I hope Joe Biden follows through on his other promise of getting out of Iraq, ending the bloodshed there. Iraq, arguably the situation is worse. We have no right to be in these countries. We have no business being in these countries. At least in Afghanistan, we had an original justifiable motive. In Iraq and all the other countries we've been invading and bombing, we have no business being there, no right. It is a violation of international law. It is a violation of the sovereignty of other countries. And I'm very glad that the president has followed through with this despite the onslaught of coordinated media hatred and it's crazy seeing how many people have been convinced by the rhetoric that this wasn't done well and that this is a disaster. I think history will look kindly on Joe Biden in the sense of, just like we should have gotten it out of Vietnam, which we did at some point, We got out of Afghanistan, which we should have done a long time ago. So incredible decision, incredibly courageous decision given the amount of resistance he's been meeting from all parts of the government, of the establishment. And although I'm very sad for the people of Afghanistan, and that will continue, it's not happening starting now, it's just a continuation of what's been happening already. It is not we're not the world police. We are not here to solve the world's problems. We do not have the resources, and we do not have the right to invade every country in the world where there's terror. If not, we would be invading China with its genocide of the Uyghur Muslims, or in Myanmar with the genocide of, I believe it's also Muslims there, but I'm not exactly sure. We would be invading Venezuela for its oppression of its people. We would be invading Yemen for the genocide that Saudi Arabia is doing. So I guess we'd be invading Saudi Arabia too. A lot of people don't know about that. There is so much pain and suffering in the world, unfortunately, much of which is caused by the United States, though not all of it, of course. And we cannot go around invading countries trying to solve their problems militarily. It tends to create more problems than it actually solves, as is evident by the rise of ISIS that occurred in response to the power vacuums that were created in Iraq after we took down the government. Saddam was a horrible guy. There's plenty of other horrible dictators across the world that are just, we don't lift a finger. Saudi Arabia is a theocracy. United Arab Emirates has slave labor, and we're not invading any of these countries. We're not threatening to bomb them. And in fact, we're allies with them, and we support them using our military oftentimes. So this was the right decision. I'm glad he did it. This is probably the best thing a president has done in my lifetime, or at least it's definitely in the top 5. And if he, Biden's already earned my respect, though I still fundamentally disagree with him on a lot of domestic issues. But if he does this with Iraq, I think he will be the best president that has served in my lifetime. I just wanted to add, this is so much to cover about Afghanistan, but this is really important to mention, is that it is our moral responsibility to accept all Afghan refugees. We created the conditions that are there, and now that the Taliban have quickly taken over the country, particularly people who were affiliated with the United States or the previous government that we had imposed, that quickly fell apart. There's a significant number of people, and so far we've been doing a pretty good job of getting evacuations happening. So I think it is our moral responsibility to accept Afghans and to create a path for citizenship for them in this country. I don't know exactly how to do that or what that entail, but we have to figure that out. And we can't just leave them there in a country that we have been actively harming for the last 10 years. It's untenable. It's unconscionable. It's just something we can't allow. So I fully support the immigration, facilitated immigration by the United States of Afghan refugees into our country, and welcome them as hopefully one day fellow citizens.